So, I'm Amanda Arnold. Welcome to my channel. This is my very first YouTube, and welcome to A Billion Baby Steps. My goal is really just to tell my story, to talk about my infertility journey, to explain maybe a little bit of the background. This is meant for like my friends, my family, other people who maybe struggle with infertility. Just want to really open up that dialogue, and I feel kind of compelled to talk about the process because it's a lot. Essentially, I got diagnosed back in 2018 with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. They say about 1 in 10 women have PCOS, which is crazy because there's not a lot known about it. And I didn't realize that I had it until going off birth control. My husband and I got married in 2017, and we tried to get pregnant right away. Went off birth control and thought, okay, we're gonna have a baby within a year. 90% of couples that try within the first year, they get pregnant. So when that year passed, we thought, okay, we're not in a rush, big deal. And then you start to wonder as another year goes by and another year. Is it going to happen? Is it just me? It's a little bit of a lonely and weird place to be in because your whole life, like, you really try not to get pregnant. You're on birth control, you're, doing things that prevent pregnancy. And so a lot of women, in my support groups that I'm in on Facebook and all sorts of infertility groups, talk about how they never even realized this was going to be a problem until they started to try to conceive. So when I got diagnosed in 2018 with PCOS, I was like, good, I have a diagnosis. Now we can figure out a treatment. And so from there, I actually decided for a little while I was going to just keep trying naturally and see what happened. Nothing happened, of course. We're in the same position today, trying to conceive 4 years after we got married. And now last year we went to a fertility doctor, and it was a eye-opening experience. They knew more about it. They were able to treat us with some medications that would help me ovulate, because women with PCOS often don't ovulate. There's a lot of reasons for that. But today, now fast forward, we've been doing this for about a year, fertility treatments for about a year. We've been on medications that like I mentioned, force ovulation. You have to take pills for 5 days. Then you have to inject yourself with a drug that forces ovulation within the next 36 hours. Then they can tell you to do either timed intercourse, or you would have to do an insemination in the office, which I've done both. And so we tried, and we did get pregnant once. We had a chemical pregnancy, which is an early miscarriage. A lot of women experience this. Many women won't even know they're experiencing this due to fertility treatments, constant checking on if you're pregnant. We knew way earlier than maybe a normal woman would have. And so we had our really happy moment of we're pregnant, and then the unfortunate news of it's not going to be viable or continue. So, which was, kind of crazy, right? You get this wonderful high, and you finally see your first positive pregnancy test, and the doctor tells you you're pregnant, and then you get bad news that there's mosquitoes out here. Sorry. You get bad news that you aren't going to be continuing to be pregnant. So we got back on the wagon, we tried some more, and then eventually got pregnant again. In January, we found out we were pregnant, and the levels that they check, you take a bunch of blood tests whenever you find out you're pregnant to be sure that your levels are going up properly. In this case, it went up and it went up and went up, and then it went down. Or so it stayed about the same. So they say, hey, this is not a good sign. It's most likely a chemical pregnancy again. So we kind of braced ourselves for that. A chemical pregnancy, again, is a very early miscarriage, so you don't have to go through anything too invasive. You don't have to take pills to help you with the process. It just kind of naturally flows. But in this case, my numbers, my HCG levels, the blood level, the pregnancy hormone they test you for, did go back up. And so to them, that indicates potentially an ectopic pregnancy, which is when the pregnancy the embryo implants into the wrong place, and it's not viable, it's not safe, it's actually very dangerous. It's the leading cause to pregnant women's death in the first trimester. So when it implants somewhere, it essentially keeps growing as if it were in the right spot, and can burst and cause internal bleeding. You can lose your tubes from it, depending on where it bursts or where it's growing. And so we did some ultrasounds. They couldn't find where it was, but basically they said, hey, it's ectopic. So we got that news in late January this year. And then from there, essentially to treat it, you have to terminate it with a methotrexate shot, which is a chemotherapy drug that basically eliminates cells that are dividing in your body. And so that was a couple months. I just recently got my very first negative pregnancy test from that ectopic. So it takes your body some time to push everything out and move forward. So now we're in the position where we're moving on to IVF. And IVF is in vitro fertilization. It's a very, very intricate process. So many steps are involved, so many hormones and tests that they take from your blood, and they're constantly monitoring you. So with in vitro fertilization, the price tag on that usually isn't covered by insurance. Our insurance doesn't cover a single cent of it. Nothing really for fertility is oftentimes not covered. It's really usually not, which is unfortunate because it is 1 out of 10 women, 1 out of 10 couples, experience it. So I am to the point now where, like I said, we're going into this in vitro, and we were supposed to start that process this month, but my ectopic pushed everything back further because I had to wait for a negative pregnancy test to begin that. So now we are looking at a date with being about a month away. So I'm going to be doing it's early April, so I'll be doing it in early to mid-May, starting the process. And the process is a lot of shots. You guys might have seen friends and people who put out pregnancy and baby announcements and stuff where it has tons and tons of shots and needles, because you give yourself a boatload of shots. It's all hormonal injections to get your body to produce more eggs so that they can go in and extract a bunch of the eggs. And once they extract the eggs, they will inseminate them with your spouse's or your partner or a donor sperm, and then they will put them essentially in a petri dish and let them grow. So the numbers throughout that process dwindle. So if you get 20 eggs out, then from there hi Miss Cup. Then from there you'll actually potentially have maybe half of those will fertilize, and then from there only so many will make it to like the 5th day. And you want embryos to grow 5 days. And once they grow to the 5 days, they freeze them, and then they will actually test them genetically to make sure that they're genetically sound. That's a process. That's a thing you can decide on to have or to not have. My clinic has a package where they include it. And so our next step in the process is going to be to start all the hormone injections that produce all the eggs. And that's a couple weeks of shots. So that's where we're at. That's a little bit of the backstory of our journey. The goal for me, like I said, with this video and these videos, I'm going to be keeping everyone up to date on what's happening. It's to build awareness. It's to make sure that others who are going through it, realize it's not just you. We're not alone. There's many, many people who experience infertility. Sometimes it's the male factor infertility, where the women maybe potentially have no problems. They're not infertile, but the male factor is a problem there. For us, it's really about the PCOS, and then we've had a couple of these pregnancies that have sort of gone awry. And I'm 35 years old. I'm not getting any younger. I'm right at that line where they start to say, the eggs start to decline, quality declines. So we've decided IVF is a great step, because if we want to have kids later, after, if we get pregnant now and we want to have another child, we would potentially have some more embryos to go back and utilize. Now we're open to adoption as well. Adoption is a whole other route that it's very stressful. It's very long, and that's a tough process too. Like, private adoption is, I've looked into it quite a bit, and it's insanely overwhelming to me. Like, IVF isn't overwhelming, but adoption, it just seems like that is just something I'm not willing to take on at this point in time. We would be open to it later. We would even be open to it for another child. Kyle and I, my husband, have talked about it quite a few times. We love the idea of taking on a child who needs a home. It's just become such a crazy process when you want to do that, and the government gets involved. And so we're just going with the IVF situation right now, and we're hoping that it'll be successful, but I'm going to plan on keeping everybody updated. I do have the website, abillionbabysteps.com, where I'm going to be doing some raffles. Instead of just asking for donations, we want to make it a little bit more fun. So we're going to give away, nice bottles of wines and whiskeys and tequilas and gift baskets. And Kyle's willing to do some pro bono performances to have, either virtually or in person if you're a local friend of ours or a family member. So bye, Cub. And so that's where we're at now. I think it's really just the beginning phase of the IVF process, but we've been at this for 4 years. So I'm open to questions. I'm open to, people who want to see videos about certain steps in the process. One of my next videos, I plan to talk about what types of questions I asked when going into the IVF process. I just filled out all the paperwork to get that started, and there's a lot of crazy questions they ask you. So I, at one point in time, would like to talk about that. To prep for IVF, they ask you to take a ton of supplements. So in my next video, I'm going to talk about my supplements. When I put them out on the table, it's a little overwhelming. Every day you've got to take about 15 different supplements, some of them a couple times a day, 3 times a day. So there's just a lot. And I'm a working woman. I'm in sales. I work from home, thank goodness. But the process is overwhelming. And I think for me, sharing it just helps me sort of manage why, what I'm doing and how I'm able to kind of interpret all the different steps throughout. So that's why we call the website and the channel A Billion Baby Steps. There's so many steps to getting to a baby. So I hope everybody enjoys watching and learns something from this. And if you have any questions, you want to hear about anything, I'm an open book. I'm willing to share. I'm really hoping to shed some light on the experience for those who maybe don't know about it, other women who've gone through it, men, couples, the whole situation. So thanks for joining and watching, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video here soon.